It's the evening of June 12, 1944. Officer Andrew Mynarski occupies the mid-upper turret of Lancaster Mk 726. More than 600 bombers are en route, targeting several key locations in northern France. Ahead, searchlights scan the skies, catching glimpses of Allied planes. Their sharp beams snap toward distant bombers, lighting them up for night fighters to strike. Poor souls. The fighters show no mercy. Lancasters are seen falling in flames. Inside Mk 726's cockpit, 22-year-old pilot Arthur Debrain alerts his crew. "Looks like we've got fighters incoming, boys. At least there's no flak." But even before his words fully register, the tail gunner, 22-year-old Pat Brophy, notices something. "Light flak below, Skipper." Fiery explosions erupt beneath them, bursting just shy of the aircraft. Suddenly, a spotlight finds them, then another and another. Blinding beams flood their vision, leaving most of the crew momentarily sightless. "Hold on, we've been coned." Debrain reacts fast, sending the Lancaster into a sharp corkscrew maneuver. In the top turret, Mynarski grips tight as the massive bomber twists and dives. They lurch violently as the maneuver bottoms out, and Debrain yanks the plane upward, vanishing into cloud cover. They've escaped the deadly lights, or so it seems. Ju-88 versus Lancaster. The Germans often cut their searchlights when a night fighter has locked onto a target. A Ju-88 creeps toward the Canadian bomber from the rear. "I have visual on the bomber." Brophy, his night vision returning, catches the unmistakable silhouette of the enemy aircraft. "Bogey astern, 6 o'clock. Brace yourselves." Debrain doesn't hesitate. He throws the Lancaster into another corkscrew. Brophy tries to line up a shot, but the enemy slips away. "I lost visual. Stay sharp, everyone." All eyes scour the dark skies. Their survival depends on it. Then, from the lower right, movement. A Ju-88 fighter sliding in beneath them. Brophy swings his turret, angles downward, and fires. Tracer rounds streak toward the German craft. But the Ju-88 is specially outfitted with upward-firing cannons. It doesn't need to tail the bomber. It can strike from below, where it's safe from return fire. Brophy's rounds miss, sailing above the enemy's cockpit. Unopposed, the Ju-88 unleashes a deadly burst, perfectly aimed. The Lancaster takes fire. From the top turret, Mynarski watches in horror as 20mm shells shred the left wing. Engines are crippled. A massive explosion erupts. Leaking fuel has ignited. Below, the Ju-88 continues its relentless assault, firing volley after volley. Explosive shells rip through the fuselage, sending shrapnel through the bomber's core, severing electrical systems and rupturing hydraulics. Oil sprays throughout the interior. Then, a spark. The Lancaster erupts in flames. Instruments die. The aircraft veers hard left as only the right engines remain. "We've been hit. Port engines are failing." Debrain wrestles with the controls, doing everything to prevent the massive aircraft from spiraling out of control. He swears under his breath at the loss of the altimeter. This mission is meant to fly low, and if they're dropping, there's barely any time left. Debrain gives a sharp command to the crew. "Bail out, now!" He activates the bailout signal for those in the turrets. But in the rear, Brophy is calling for updates. The intercom remains dead silent. As the rest of the crew scrambles to abandon the aircraft, Brophy patiently continues his calls. "Skipper! Skipper! Can you hear me? Anyone? Skipper!" Even his closest friend, Andrew Mynarski, doesn't respond, and Brophy realizes no one can hear him. Warm air starts to seep through the bomber's interior, and he senses something is going very wrong. Looking behind him, he spots growing flames consuming the fuselage. Flames moving dangerously close to his parachute hanging on the wall. He tries to rotate the turret by stepping on the pedal, but nothing happens. "All right, stay calm. Don't panic." To exit the turret, both doors must align with the fuselage's rear. But, with fire advancing and him stuck in the turret, and no parachute on, he knows he's trapped. The blaze is so intense now, he wouldn't survive even if the doors were lined up. His parachute hangs in the main body of the plane. Thinking fast, he manages to push one of the turret doors open and hooks his hand around to grab the chute. He yanks it inside quickly, the heat from the fire scorching his skin. He clips it onto his chest, but time is running out. With hydraulics dead, the turret doors jammed, and fire blocking the way, he scrambles to improvise. If he can move the turret to a different position, he might be able to exit straight into open air. Without hydraulics, the only option is the slow hand crank. He grabs it, turning with all his might, frantic. But hope turns to horror. The crank breaks in his hands. He's trapped. Meanwhile, in the main body of the Lancaster, the crew have no idea what's happening at the back. They rush to evacuate. Andrew Mynarski drops from the top turret and reaches for his chute. As the aircraft bucks violently, he clips it on and heads toward the escape hatch. Just as he's about to leap, he glances toward the rear and spots his friend, Brophy. Through a curtain of burning oil, he can see Brophy still trapped in the turret, struggling. Something is very wrong. Without hesitation, Mynarski grabs an axe and charges straight into the fire. He crawls through the narrow, twisted structure of the tail section. Heat burns through his flight suit, his clothes beginning to smolder, then ignite. Pain flares through his legs, but he keeps going. Brophy is trying to force the turret doors when he spots a shocking sight. His best friend pushing through the fire to reach him. His eyes go wide with disbelief. "Andy, no, don't!" Brophy tries to wave him off, but Mynarski refuses. Now, groaning in agony, Mynarski drives the axe into the turret's edge, pulling with every ounce of strength. It won't budge. With a cry of pain, he tosses the axe aside and grabs the door with his bare, burning hands. He hauls with everything he has. The turret groans and moves, just barely, but not enough. The opening is far too narrow. Brophy peers through the slim gap and sees Mynarski's legs fully ablaze. He's burning alive. "Andy!" Now, writhing in unbearable pain, Mynarski locks eyes with his closest friend. His gaze settles on the four-leaf clover dangling from Brophy's helmet. A charm Mynarski had found and gifted him that very morning. With a final scream, he strains against the turret, pouring every ounce of strength into moving it. But it barely shifts. His arms tremble violently. Despite the searing agony, he refuses to abandon his friend. "Go back, Andy. Get out." Mynarski lowers his head, his eyes glistening with tears of helplessness. He knows it's hopeless and offers a solemn nod. Their eyes meet one last time as Mynarski slowly backs into the flames. Brophy watches in disbelief as Mynarski crawls toward the escape door, his clothes still ablaze. But he doesn't jump. Drawing upon his last ounce of willpower, Mynarski straightens himself. One final farewell. He raises his arm and salutes. He shouts something Brophy can't make out through the roar of fire and rushing wind. But he doesn't need to hear it. He knows those words. They're the same words Mynarski would say after every afternoon together. "Good night, sir." And then he leaps into the black night. Up in the front of the aircraft, the remaining crew scrambles to evacuate. At the controls, a weary and exhausted DeBrain watches what he assumes is the last of his men depart. As soon as he believes everyone is clear, he reduces power to the remaining engines and feels the control tension release. Without the uneven thrust, the bomber finally flies level, but it's still descending, loaded with bombs. DeBrain bolts for the hatch and leaps into the night sky. His parachute opens and from below he watches the burning Lancaster drift away. What he doesn't realize is that one of his crew remains on board. Inside the doomed bomber, Brophy is still stuck in the turret, bracing for the end. He doesn't pray for himself, he prays for the others, and most of all, for Mynarski. Hail Mary, full of grace. I hope Andy made it down okay. Pray for us sinners. As the Lancaster drops lower, Brophy knows it's over. Meanwhile, Mynarski plummets through the darkness, his suit still aflame. The fire catches his parachute, burning through one suspension line, then another, and another. The chute partially collapses, and he begins to fall faster, spinning out of control as the treetops rush up to meet him. Mynarski would never recover from his injuries. The crash miles away, the Lancaster's left wing brushes a tree, sending the plane into a brutal spin. The force of the turn violently rips the rear turret free. It hurtles through the trees and crashes to the ground, ejecting Brophy from the wreckage. The turret skids to a halt. As the screech of torn metal and crackling fire fade, Brophy opens his eyes. He drifts between consciousness and blackness. Eventually, he awakens fully. The air is hauntingly still. The forest glows with a hellish red as firelight dances among the trees. He wonders if he's dead. There's no pain, but he's afraid to move. Carefully, he tests his limbs. half expecting they're no longer there. But he stands. Behind him, what remains of the Lancaster lies mangled and aflame, a broken husk glowing in the dark French forest. Miraculously, he's alive. But now he's deep in enemy territory. Without wasting a moment, he throws anything non-essential into the fire to hide any trace. Brophy's journey. French resistance fighters discovered Brophy and shielded him from German forces until Allied troops arrived 2.5 months later. It wasn't until long after the crash that Brophy learned of Mynarski's fate. The weight of surviving while his friend had perished never left him. He made it his life's purpose to share Andrew Mynarski's final heroic moments. His story spread, and in time, Mynarski was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross for his selfless bravery. And this isn't the only tale of heroism aboard a Lancaster. Did you hear the one about the airman who climbed outside the aircraft mid-mission to put out a fire? Watch that story, and others filled with near-impossible escapes from death.